Hello and welcome to another episode of the Lei'd Back Life podcast. We're talking about how to love entrepreneurship, our lives, and improve daily. Joining me today, one of my kindred spirits in the legal profession who truly cares and pushes life stuff. Laura Cowan is joining us. She's the founder of the Law Office of Laura Cowan, an award-winning estate planning law firm based in New York City. But also, she's the creator of the 2-Hour Lifestyle Lawyer, a groundbreaking program that teaches attorneys how to launch and market a virtual estate planning practice. And she's also the author of the Lifestyle Lawyer Revolution, Live a Life You Love Without Leaving the Law, a guide for lawyers who want more freedom, fulfillment, and flexibility in their careers. So obviously, if you listen to this podcast, you know the kind of guest we're looking for. Laura checks all of those boxes, and I'm so excited to have you today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so I'm curious, how did you come to have this lifestyle focus? Was that a day one thing for you? Was that a journey down the path? What happened?
It was not a day one thing. It was more of a journey that happened, I would say, post-COVID. So I've been practicing estate planning law for about 10 years now. I'm in New York City. And I did it for about 5 years pre-COVID. And then I think in New York City, especially, we had to turn virtual literally overnight in March of 2020. And so I went from meeting clients in person, just like everybody else, that's how it was for decades, to having to make a living virtually because we weren't allowed to meet people in person. So I quarantined with my dad in Rhode Island and really had to streamline my practice. I had to go from in-person meetings, in-person everything, to now everything is virtual. And I think it was a combination of, combining this new way of lawyering, that wasn't really acceptable before, combined with working from home and having, flexibility. And it just kind of all came together into this idea where I realized during COVID that I was working just a couple of hours a day, doing everything virtually, making at least $10,000 a month, oftentimes a lot more because my own practice was very established. But a couple of years out of COVID, and I realized there's a lot of lawyers that now want to learn how to do estate planning because it's so flexible now. So I think it was kind of a combination of all of those things together. And I think just in general, society is changing, not just for law, but for many professions. Do we have to work the 9 to 5? Maybe not.
So what was your work-life balance like prior to COVID?
My work-life balance prior to COVID it wasn't bad because one of the nice things about estate planning as a practice area and certainly running your own firm is that you do have a lot of control over your schedule. So I was able to manage my calendar, etc. But I was in person 9 to 5. And it just seems unreal to me when I look back, that we used to be in person for every single thing. So there wasn't really the flexibility that we have now. I had good work-life balance, but it was still very much tethered to the office.
Right. Well, that's, that was what I wanted to share is I imagine there's people listening to this who are 9 to 5. I would sign up for that, let alone the flexibility. So, and that's look, COVID was terrible. I don't want to take anything away from that, but it amazes me how many people were able to have that break, have that pause, take that breath and really think about, why am I stuck at the office? Do I really like the area of practice that I have? Whatever the pivot opportunity, wake up call thing that people had. So I love that you were hey, an office is not as important.
Yeah. And it was, it's kind of funny because we had Zoom pre-COVID, which, seems kind of crazy now. It's been there the whole time. It just wasn't what I call socially acceptable to really hire an attorney. Maybe it happened here or there, but it wasn't really happening. And, I did this for 5 years pre-COVID and nobody would have hired me via Zoom, right? I know that they wanted to come into my office. And so now it's more socially acceptable. And I think that's a really key point. What things do we think matter? Well, meeting in person really doesn't matter anymore. You can get the same legal advice via Zoom.
Yeah, I always talk to people about that from the marketing perspective, right? Like the ultimate marketing is what you want to do and what your ideal client wants to see and like connect it together. And so having the beauty of Zoom meetings having the same luster, the same appeal as in person, I think is a huge thing to allow people a lot more flexibility, a lot more freedom.
Yeah, yeah. And you get some lawyers who are like, no, I like meeting people in person. And of course, there's some consumers who want to meet with their lawyer in person. And, there's no right or wrong. I think what's nice about what's going on today is that we just have more options. Everybody has more options.
So sounds like this comes together into the 2 hour lifestyle lawyer program. Am I right in that?
You're absolutely right. Yes. I started implementing it myself without even needing to. It was just what I was forced to do. And then I came back post COVID, and I kind of came back to New York City and got back into the flow. And I started to notice, and this was 2022, a lot of lawyers were interested in adding estate planning as a practice area because of the flexibility that we didn't have before. It's a great practice area in a lot of ways, but it's really great now that we can do it from anywhere. So I started seeing all over Facebook lawyers asking, how do I do estate planning? How do I do it virtually? And I was like, well, I have the answers to that. So I put together a course and I called it the 2 hour lifestyle lawyer. And we've now had over 550 lawyers go through it.
Amazing. Well, and they always talk about, right? Like the best personal brand is just keep talking to yourself, 3 to 5 years behind. And obviously, I mean, COVID 2020 to 2022, so 2 years behind, like it's perfect because you are far enough ahead, but close enough to be relatable.
Yeah. And I'm still practicing, I'm still doing all the things. And it was funny because, for a while, the flexibility and the virtual was a big deal. And now we've got AI that's like changed everything, that the landscape is always changing. I think one of the nice things about our program is that I'm still practicing and I'm still learning.
I love it. Well, and that's like it always cracks me up how much I hated school, but how much I love being a lifelong learner now when I can see the impact of all those things. And so it's great to see more people doing it all, still interested in learning, knowing we don't have all the answers, not being a guru, but being that, practitioner while teaching the people behind them. Because like at its core, we are a trade, right? Like that is at the end of the day, people learn the law from following lawyers around. We've systematized a lot of it into law school and whatnot, but like it's still a profession. It's still a trade. There's still a benefit to learning from those around us.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the only way to do it, right? And yeah, it's one of the things we love about our community. Most of the lawyers in our community, myself included, are solos. And so, we don't have that partner down the hall. And that's something that you miss. And even if you did have a partner down the hall, they're not really down the hall, they're on Zoom in some other city probably. So we've kind of lost that in-person helping of each other. And I think that can be really lonely. It can be really lonely even as an entrepreneur, it's lonely, but then now we're all in front of Zoom. So I think the community is even more important than ever.
So I want to talk a little bit more about the program. And obviously that's more, estate planning from this virtual aspect of it. But before we get into that, when it comes to like the lifestyle of lawyers, is there a specific lifestyle you're pushing? Is it the availability of this? Is it helping people find their own creation? Like, how does that play into any of the programs in the book that you've written?
I wouldn't say there's a specific lifestyle that we're pushing, but we're pushing, what are we pushing? We're pushing, flexibility with your schedule. And it's going to be different for every kind of practice area. Right. This is one of the things that I think many lawyers may not think about. The choices you make as a personal injury attorney might be different from those as an estate planning attorney. But what we want our lawyers to have is our options and flexibility. And you can have those things in terms of setting your schedule, deciding what days you're working, deciding how many clients you want. You can make all of those choices with estate planning and kind of dial it up or dial it down as much as you want. So, for example, when I'm slow, I'll open up my calendar and I'll get more meetings on the calendar. When I'm really, really busy, I'll close down my calendar, right? And it's just kind of like a faucet you can turn on and off. And here's my cat. It's just like a faucet you can turn on and off. So the idea is not, oh, we want to work less and charge a whole bunch of money and, go sit on the beach. That's not what we're teaching. My clients all get 5-star service, even if I'm only serving 2 or 3 clients per month. Right. So I think that's a hurdle we have to get over, this idea that if I'm a lawyer and I'm only working, 20 hours a week, I'm not doing my job as a lawyer. And I think that that's a real disservice to spread that message. You can only serve 2 or 3 clients a month, but serve them with 5-star service. And I think for a long time as a profession, we were like, no, that's not allowed. But I think it's allowed.
See, I agree with you. And I think the opposite is worse, right? Like if you're working 80 to 100 hours a week and you're constantly burned out, I don't think you can serve anybody with 5-star service because you just don't have anything left in the tank to give to people. So I'm with you. How do you help people figure out what that size looks like for them, what that lead flow, what those hours of work?
Yeah, it's just everyone comes to us from a different place, right? So we have some lawyers that are like, I'm half personal injury and I'd like to do 3 or 4 estate plans per month just to, have another revenue stream. Others come in and they say, I want a full-time estate planning practice, and it's great that you're going to get us up to 10 grand a month, but I want to scale that to 50,000 a month at some point. And then we've got lawyers in the community, a lot of lawyers that are kind of like me. I serve 4 clients per month, and that's sort of my limit. It ends up being $25,000 in revenue, and I just cut it off at 4 because I've got other businesses and other things that I'm doing. So I think the way that estate planning is structured and the way that we teach it in the program, each client takes about 1 month, right? From the beginning to the end, they hire you, they sign by the end. So you can really start to think about, well, how many clients do I want per month? What does that look like for me? What's that going to mean for my schedule? And then you can scale it up or scale it down accordingly. So some months I might do 2 or 3 estate plans. Others I might do 8 or 9. Others I might do 0. But I feel a lot of, it's very comforting to me knowing that I'm always going to be able to do an estate plan if I need some revenue.
Well, and I love, okay, so everybody sees, Morgan and Morgan and size matters and all this stuff, but you go to I have not been to a club in a very long time, but there's the VIP room, right? There's the roped off area, there's the section, there's the extra limit on people. So I'm thinking about the ability to market, hey, I'm only taking 4 clients this month. I'm only taking 3 more clients next month, whatever the number is, when it's true and honest. What a good marketing opportunity. What real scarcity versus, the ticking clock on a website that every time you reload the website, the clock starts over, or whatever other BS that people put together. I love this so much from the marketing perspective as much as the lifestyle perspective.
That's the irony, is that when I close down my calendar, I actually get more business, and I didn't mean for it to be that way, but there is an element of scarcity. Sometimes I think it's okay to say we're a boutique firm. We take
Right.
4 clients per month. This is our calendar. And shockingly, my calendar's always full with that limited availability.
It's interesting because I use the doctor analogy a ton. I hate if I call up my doctor. So we're recording this in September 2025, right? I don't want our next available appointment is the end of March 2026. But if the doctor answered the phone and was like, yeah, I'm free right now, you want to come on down, I'd also be concerned. And so I love that there is that balance that we're looking for in terms of availability of the expert that we are hiring for a problem.
Yeah, and it's also, I think it's something to be said for, most of us are not thinking, well, I want to limit it to 4. We're always being taught more clients are better. More clients are better. You've got to build bigger, bigger, bigger. And while I get the nervousness of not having enough revenue, I completely understand that. More clients is not always better. And it's hard to explain that to people because we're also concerned about, making a living. But sometimes more clients, if you don't have your law firm structured the right way, the support and all of that, it's just going to mean overwhelm and bad reviews. You might have money in the bank, but it's not going to be worth it. So there's a fine line.
As Laura is talking about my practice for the first 3 or 4 years that we ran it, I was the poster child for the we'll just get more, more clients, more money, more this, and it just became more problems. So yeah, at the end of the day, if you can perfectly line up the entire process, like that's where you have the fewest number of problems, right? Like if you're constantly trying to grow, that has problems. If you can't find enough work, that has problems. Like getting it all dialed in. And so obviously, like here, you are a lot more focused with people on what does this look like from beginning to end, instead of, selling them one piece, right? Like the marketing company wants to sell you more leads. They want you to buy more leads. This, if you pay per sales, your salespeople want more opportunities to get more commission. Like having, a program like Laura's that just goes everywhere just becomes so liberating to some extent, I think.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you mentioned that, because I think one of the things that we share in our discovery calls is, we've got this model we call ACE. You've got to be able to attract your leads, you've got to be able to close them, and then you've got to be able to execute the work. And if you're good at just one of those things, you're going to struggle, right? You've got to be good at all three. You've got to be able to bring in leads without spending more than you can afford. You've got to be able to close them. And then you've got to have a way to execute the work in a way that you're not at the office until 10 o'clock at night. And I think, after practicing estate planning for 10 years and running around New York City, like literally building my practice, what I've learned is you've got to be good at all three, right? There's no point in getting a bunch of leads in the door if you can't close them.
Right.
And there's no point getting a bunch of business if now you don't have the systems to serve those people, or you're at the office until 10 o'clock at night. So the focus is not always just bringing in more revenue. And I think that so many coaches really dangle that carrot. And I think it's a little bit of I don't know quite what the word is, but it's just not a full picture. It's not a full accurate picture of what more revenue oftentimes just brings more problems.
Well, and so look, there's 168 hours in the week, right? If you're working 40 hours a week or 25 hours, whatever it is, like there's a point of scale where you don't have time to excel at the A, the C, and the E based upon the number of cases. So like taking the number down to what you can actually do. And again, like lining this up the whole way through. I mean, I love the concept of, you're pitching it kind of month by month from the standpoint of them getting the client in, delivering the estate plan in that month makes it so much easier to figure out what that cadence becomes of each case to layer them on top. Because like that's the biggest issue I see. My clients beating themselves up because they're like, I suck at everything. And I'm like, no, you're doing 6 full-time jobs in 60 hours. Like it's not you. It's physically not possible.
It's not possible. They don't teach any of this in law school. And I get it. Like we need to learn how to read case law in law school. I get it, but there is a little bit of a mismatch, I think, between the reality that most lawyers are at some point in time going to either have their own practice or they're going to work for a smaller practice. So this is going to be relevant to them. And none of us really get any guidance, on how to do it. So I think our program is really heavy on like, this is what it's like to be a law firm owner. It's a great practice area if you're entrepreneurial. If you're not entrepreneurial, maybe it's not the best practice area because you do have to hustle a little bit.
Okay, so I want to dive into that in a second. I want to talk about, so our last episode was our Ask Me Anything with only yours truly, aka Storytime with Jordan. So hopefully you are as happy as I am that we are back to the interviews, because I hate talking nonstop for an hour, although there were some insanely good questions. Thank you very much, whoever came up with a lot of those questions. That being said, Laura, so let's transition. Tell me a little bit more about the program. We've talked around it. It's estate planning. It's the 2-hour lifestyle, but like, who's the ideal person for it?
Yeah, this is a great question because that has changed over time. We've been doing this for 3 years now, about 550 lawyers. And what we've learned is that we help people best when they're brand new to estate planning and don't really have any systems or anything set up. And it's their goal to get their first paying clients. I would say about 70% of the people who take our course are in that bucket. And then we've got about 30% who have been doing a little bit of estate planning, but don't really have, any systems in place. They've already gotten their first client, but now they need to improve their profitability. And so we've got 2 tracks, it's either get your first paying client, which is in and of itself a huge hurdle. And I really celebrate that. I always tell people I got my first client in April of 2017. And I remember the day because it was life changing. Up until that point in time, I'd always been a 9 to 5. I'd always depended on someone else. You get someone to hand you a check for $4,000, it's life changing. Now you've got to repeat it though. You've got to keep going, and that's hard. So I forgot my train. I've lost my train of thought. What was I going after? Oh yeah,
So we were talking about the standpoint of ideal clients.
we celebrate the first
Celebrating them.
client. Yeah, because
Yeah.
that's very hard. You do it once, and you're like, this is great, but now you've got to repeat it, right? So most of the lawyers in our program are new, and they really benefit from that. But we do have a lot of lawyers that have been doing estate planning, and they're like, I want to do it virtually, or I'm not charging what I'm worth, and they all benefit as well.
Well, and it's that proof of concept is so important. So for those people, that first sale, or that first delivered estate plan or that first 5-star review just becomes like such a great motivator to do it, over and over again, even if it's just, 4 times a month, if it's 10 times a month, if it's twice a month, it's amazing. I love that you're getting people to have that clarity as they continue to grow.
And I think that there's a little bit, I'm in the coaching space and I'm in the entrepreneurial space. So I see a lot of things outside the legal space as well. And there's just so much focus on, grow your $10 million law firm or your $1 million law firm. And I think there's a lot of glossing over just the hurdle of getting started, right? You don't have to go from 0 to 1 million overnight. There's somewhere in between, but I think that a lot of the programs they want to dangle that revenue carrot as a way to get people in. The revenue matters, but we want our clients to have the lawyers in our program to have a profitable practice. And we want to be able to say, because we know that revenue and profit are not the same thing, but also we want the lawyers in our community to be able to say, I'm working 20 hours a week and I'm still a good lawyer. And now I'm going to go coach my daughter's soccer team. And you're allowed to say that. No one has ever given us permission to say that.
It's so true. It's so true. How do you help people be okay with that?
I think it's a mindset thing. And I think it's also, I'm demoing what I'm practicing what I'm preaching. I've got a 5-star New York City estate planning practice that takes 4 clients per month that I probably spend, just like the logo, a couple of hours a day on. Right. And I don't get anything other than 5-star reviews. Knock on wood. I've got very good client service. So I think just being able to say, listen, this is what I'm doing in my own practice.
Right.
Right. And then maybe it's a little bit easier for me because I have an established practice, but still.
And there's 500 something other people saying like, yes, this worked for us too.
Yeah, they're able to take bits and pieces of it. We don't prescribe, anything. We're just giving you all the tools that we have. It's the practice of law. There's no one right way to do it, but we're going to give you the wheel that has already been created.
Well, I will say there's a wrong way to do it, though. I reflect back to a pre-COVID networking meeting, and somebody, this lawyer comes in haggard and, grabs a drink and is chatting with his friends and just like, I billed, 12 hours today and yada, yada, yada. Well, I billed, 1,600 last year. I billed 1,800, whatever. And just at some point you're like, why? Like what did that, why, to what end? What did that allow you to do? So I love, the coaching your kid's soccer team and being able to take vacation and see the family and spend the money you're making. And at some point I wish more people prioritize that stuff like you and I are.
And I think it's hard because, society really dictates and has for a long time what a good lawyer is. You'll see when you read the book, we've got a whole chapter on what's a good lawyer, and let's redefine what that means. It doesn't necessarily mean working 80 hours a week. And I think that's a real mindset shift.
All right, so I want to talk about the book before we get to that. So if you all are watching when it came out on Tuesday. This Friday, the newsletter is Netflix, Nachos, and Neglect. So basically the difference between being able to curl up and binge the show because you earned it versus using that as an escape from all your problems. And so super cool, alliterative newsletter that I enjoyed writing after watching Netflix and eating nachos. So that being said,
I love your newsletters. Your newsletters are the best.
Thank you. Because it's me. It's so me. And thank you. I always appreciate the kind feedbacks because I try to be very honest. with it. So this is a fun one.
I think
Um,
honesty is what people are looking for, just transparency, authenticity.
yeah, and I think, having, like, you mentioned the 5-star reviews, having 4 clients, right? Like, you have to be that much more honest and above board with them, because like you only have 4 opportunities to get those reviews every month. Whereas like, a firm that's got 1,000 clients, it's easier to make people into a number. And so just like having this, I'm amazed by how few people really force people to think through this decision, second order, third order thinking through the rest of the practice. And like, I'm enamored with what you're doing.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for that. And it reminds me of something that one of our lead coach, Lainey Lyons, teaches. Looking at, well, let's see where you are, and we want this many more clients per month. Okay, so let's look at what that's going to mean. Do you have capacity for 8 more, what we call peace of mind planning sessions, 8 more consults? Well, no, I actually don't have capacity for 8 more consults, right? Or do you have capacity to draft 8 more estate plans? What is this going to look like? Oftentimes the more revenue puts you in a worse position than you were before, right? It may not, but you need to know how to do the numbers.
You ever read Scaling Up by Vern Harnish?
No, should I?
So probably. At the very least, he has a chapter on cash flow, and it basically is like how you grow your business out of business. And it's amazing. Like, I can't do it justice the way he explains selling more things. If you don't get paid quickly enough, if you're not profitable, you have to make returns, whatever. Like, just the ways that he walks through more revenue putting you out of business faster, it blew my mind. And
I
so
have to
like,
check that out. More revenue putting you out of business faster. Remarkable. I have to read
yeah,
that.
it's I like the entire book. That chapter though, like, it should be mandatory reading for every business owner, because I have never before and never since had that cash flow laid out in that manner. Um, anyway, talk to me about the book though. So, Lifestyle Lawyer Revolution: Live a Life You Love Without Leaving the Law.
This was a labor of love, a lot of L's in there. And now we're going to throw in the labor of love. This is a book. Again, I hadn't really planned on writing a book. It came from 2HLL. And when you read the book, you'll see that we reached out to our community to help us kind of just figure out, what are people unhappy about? Why did they take the course? What is it that they like? It's not a sales pitch for the course, but really we did some homework trying to figure out what are lawyers really struggling with. And I think up until now, there's so many books out there, kind of the do what you love and the money will follow, and this is and that. And I don't know how helpful I find that kind of advice. I think there's a real structure, a real mindset shift that needs to happen. Because the book takes into account, like, we get it. You've got a law degree, you've got student loans, you've got 2 kids to take care of, you've got a mortgage, you've got a car payment, and a dog that needs to be walked. Like, life is hard. None of those responsibilities are going to go away. How can we make this work? Right. And that's what the book is about. Because it's just not enough to say, well, do what you love and everything else is going to follow. No, that's not enough. So we wanted the book to be just kind of a roadmap for maybe a different way of thinking about being a lawyer, whether that means you go into estate planning or any option. There's a lot of different options, but we wanted lawyers to feel a little bit less like they're trapped, and more that there are options for using your law degree in a great way that doesn't mean going and taking a job and working 80 hours a week.
Well, and there's a huge, like, there's that balance, right? Like, Aristotle talks about the golden mean for anything. You go too far to either side, it's a problem. But there's if you enjoy what you're doing, you will stay in the game longer. You will put in the extra hours to learn the craft. You will really be interested in trying out different marketing strategies. Like, I talked to so many law firm owners that genuinely at one point hated what they did. And they're like, it's really hard to run ads when you hate every lead that comes in from them. Like, we need to balance these things in terms of staying in the game and enjoying life and having this lifestyle.
Yeah. You need to balance them, and also, kind of make a shift in your own mind that if you're not working 80 hours a week, it doesn't mean you're a bad lawyer.
What's the, I know, I mean, we talked about that. I just like, I keep getting stuck up on how few people in the industry, right? We've got 1.5-ish million lawyers. Like, how many of them are willing to admit that, would you say? What percentage?
Willing to admit that they're working more than they should be because they feel like they're supposed to.
Well, yeah, or that it's okay to work less. Like we are the billable hour profession, right? Like we wear overwork as a badge of honor because we are literally competing against each other for who can bill more in some sort of weird grinder mentality, but we end up as dust.
Yeah, I think it's hard for people to admit, and I think it's hard to say what I had to go through in my own mind, which was, how much revenue is enough? At what point in time does more money not solve the problems? And this is a hard concept to sell because we're all worried about making enough money, right? So I don't want to minimize that. But I realized as I grew and I scaled, I wasn't actually doing any better. And because I was just busier and I had more, problems and my profitability didn't necessarily go up. During COVID, I was forced to scale back. And I realized, it's okay to not want more than 10,000 a month or 20,000 a month. I know that there's lawyers in my program that want $100,000 months, and that's fine. And what we teach can be scaled up. But I think that there's a place for lawyers who are like, listen, if I could make an extra 10,000 a month serving families in my community, helping them get a will in place, that is a huge amount of money for the vast majority of us, myself included. Like that's nothing to sneeze at. And yet for some reason, our profession is like sneezing at $10,000 a month, when for some people that might be life-changing.
Well, but I think it comes back to their why, right? And like I think it's interesting, Simon Sinek's got the book Start with Why, but it's not actually like finding the why. It's like incorporating the why into what you do it. So for those people who need the $100,000 a month or whatever, like why? What is the reason? Usually there's, some sort of thing. My therapist always jokes, everybody's trying to go back to high school. Either you're trying to be exactly the same or exactly the opposite of how you were then. I'm like, so maybe there's a why somewhere in there. I just like finding that reason, I think. And then if people can't find it, is what finally lets them like unburden that expectation that no one in particular, but society as a whole has placed upon them.
Yes, that's such a good way of putting it. No one in particular, but we just have that. And of course, if you genuinely want a bigger firm, there's nothing wrong with that. We have that in the book as well, right? The idea is to spend some time really thinking about it and then making a decision from the right place as opposed to just pushing because you feel like that's the only path.
I'm curious. So for people that genuinely like being an attorney, so, obviously you've got live a life you love without leaving the law. What advice are you giving to them that allows them to balance being an attorney with running a great practice? Because I'm sure the larger coaching companies, the ones that are pushing those 7, 8, 9-figure firms, have to imagine they're not also having their clients keep a full caseload.
Um, I'm sorry, I missed the question.
Yeah, no problem. I say a lot of words. So basically,
Cut that
like,
part out, video editor.
no, it's cool. No worries. So the subtitle of the book, Live a Life You Love Without Leaving the Law. So I'm curious how you are talking to these law firm owners about that balance, right? Because like running a firm is its own job, being a lawyer is its own job, marketing is its own job. Like, how are you helping people balance those things?
Yeah. Yeah, the way we teach people to balance is by focusing on the things that you as the attorney should be focusing on and delegating the rest. So it's not rocket science. It's not anything that other people aren't teaching, but we really, focus on that from an estate planning perspective. What do you as the attorney have to do and what should you do in order to be the best counselor? And what should be outsourced to a paralegal or taken care of by systems and automation. And I think, I can really speak to that for estate planning. As the attorney, you should be focusing on, hosting workshops, networking, getting those referral relationships built, Those are the tried and true. They work, right? If you do it right. And then hosting the consultation and the design of the estate plan. Some lawyers really kind of speed through the design, but I think in 2025, that hour that you spend designing the plan is what sets you apart from AI. My recommendation is to not speed through the design, even if you know you could probably speed through it pretty quickly, because this is when we get to ask about all the things that AI is not asking about. So you do those things, and that's really, really important, and you need to be present for that. But the drafting, maybe a paralegal can do the first draft. A paralegal can do the first draft. I'll just go ahead and say that. Systems and automation can handle a lot of what happens around that. So the couple of hours that you have in front of the client, you are laser focused on counseling and doing what you're there to do. Once you've done that, it's okay to let Calendly deal with the appointment reminders, So it's knowing what you should be doing, what should be delegated, and then kind of building a life around that.
I love that. Like I talked to so many of my clients, like Andy Warhol. I talked to so many of my clients about Andy Warhol had the factory. Like literally that was his art house. And so had all these systems for people to make art that was in his style and put the lithographs together and get everything organized for him and just this whole thing. That's the part where we need to focus, because like you're getting these people into like what's their best leverage point, right? This is, yes, what we do as lawyers needs to have some sort of gravitas behind it, but that doesn't need to be you on draft one. That could be you with the client. So just wonderful.
And you might actually be doing your client a disservice in some ways by focusing on the things that a lower level, well, I shouldn't say lower level, but a different skill set could focus on, right? You shouldn't be doing everything. You shouldn't be answering your own phone. This is just tearing you away from the things that really matter, which is the design meeting and the other client consults. So it can be hard to let go. And I know one of the issues that a lot of lawyers have is, well, I can't afford staff. And then that's always kind of the back and forth. But knowing what you should be delegating right away is key.
Excuse me. How do you okay, so let's go actionable as much as we can for a podcast that will go out to however many people watch it. Like, what is that first thing that you delegate, or how do you figure out what that first thing is to let go of?
Yeah, so for estate planning, what we recommend is you draft all of the documents yourself in the beginning, because you need to learn the drafting software, the rules, you need to learn the documents. That makes sense. But eventually you're going to want to hire a paralegal, a professional drafter who can do that first draft for you, because really, the drafting software, there's just a lot of data entry. The decisions have been made in the design meeting. The drafting is just kind of putting it all into the software. So that would be the first thing that I would outsource, because, lawyers, like we hate it. You get the close, you do everything, and now you've got to draft it. And we kind of put that off forever. There are qualified paralegals that can do that for you. So that would be the first thing that I would outsource, is the drafting. And then maybe a virtual assistant for just a few hours a week to help you with marketing and social media, and maybe calling clients back after they've been to your workshop, that kind of thing.
Well, and I think it puts you in such an interesting position. So, you were responsible for the marketing in some manner, the referral, the webinar, the seminar, whatever it is. And then you met with them for the consultation, you did the design meeting, and now you can review what's been written. Like, it gives you so many chances to sit down with the client, but also confirm your team has done those middle sections together. It's a really, the consistency of the estate planning process, I think, really breeds great businesses.
Consistency is very important. You're absolutely right. We teach the same process for everyone. Now, are there going to be, slight tweaks maybe here and there? Sure. But most people can and should move through the same process. That's a benefit to everybody. You shouldn't be recreating the wheel for every single client, and you don't have to.
Well, and I think so who the stuff goes to, taking care of the pets, what you want to fund with any money that's left over, those answers can be very different, but asking the questions consistently, I think, allows you to execute on the answer. Maybe that's a bad word for maybe execute an estate plan should not be the exact But regardless, right? Like you're giving yourself the opportunity to be great at making things 10 to 15% different, or making the answers drastically different inside of the same process. Because like you mentioned before, AI, like what's the benefit of your law firm versus a $10 form from Office Depot? There better be a ton of difference, but you better be able to convey that to the person.
Yeah, and the difference is going to be not just in the documents themselves. I mean, my God, if anyone's listening to this, please do not use AI for your estate planning. But really, the value is in the counseling. Right. And that's what's hard. It can be hard to convey that to clients, that the value is not in the documents that are spit out, which I wouldn't trust anything that AI spit out estate planning wise, but that's not really what you're paying for anyway. It's the counseling. And then I would also point out, so few people understand that estate planning is something that you do. It's a lifetime thing. You don't just do it once. Right. So in fact, I read something interesting that I thought was kind of funny. If AI does your will, who are you going to sue when it doesn't work? And it's a valid question, right? If AI is doing your will, what happens when it goes wrong? So when the estate planning attorney drafts your estate plan, they're not only going to get you your documents today, but they're going to reach out hopefully in a year. What has changed? Did you know there's a new tax law? Have you had more children, right? Maybe your documents no longer reflect what you want. AI is not going to do that.
Right. I love it. All right. So I want to, excuse me, we'll come back for the wrap up and everything here. I want to talk about next week's episode. Next week's episode is very interesting. We've got Erin Anderson on. For those of you that don't know her, she's a hiring specialist for law firms and accounting firms, specializes in hiring support staff and associates on a flat rate basis. From the standpoint of like the workplace culture as attracting the right candidate, it's amazing to me how many people she will not work for because they don't have the right office culture or the right lifestyle. And so I'm super excited to have her on next week on our podcast to talk through that, because ultimately, like, I think what all of our guests come back to is living a better life allows you to run a better practice, allows you to be better as a boss, allows you to appeal to the right person. So super cool to look at this from the hiring perspective, something we have not covered. That being said, we've got Laura here for about another 5 minutes or so. So I'm curious, is there anything that I missed in these questions that you want to make sure we share to help more attorneys and other business owners down the path towards a better life?
Yeah, well, I
Funded
know
by a
that
better
we've got
business.
we've got lawyers of all different areas on the call, and I would just say consider reading the book, even if you're not interested in estate planning. It's geared towards that a little bit, but it actually is helpful. And we've had, some of our testimonials on Amazon specifically point out, I'm not a lawyer, but I read this and I found it really, really helpful. So I think if nothing else, it'll give you a new way to think about things. And then if you are interested in learning how to add estate planning in as a practice area, we've had over 500 lawyers take the course, most of them brand new. You're going to be in good hands, right? One other thing I wanted to point out too, I think the thing I'm most proud of, in addition to the course and the book, what I'm really proud of is our community. So again, we've got this big community of lawyers that have taken the program. We're all together in a Facebook group, and it's a really strong, supportive community. We've got the best lawyers in the world. They're helping each other out. Everybody asks questions. Everyone's getting support. We've managed to keep, politics out of it and all this stuff. It's just like a safe
Oh man,
place. I know, I don't know.
that's gonna be our follow-up episode. How do you do that?
Knock on wood. It's just like everybody is welcome here. We're here to help you, support you with your estate planning practice, period. So I'm really proud of that, because when I launched 3 years ago, I didn't have a community. I had one person and her name was Erin, and it was just the two of us. And I wasn't planning on building a community, but that's what happened. And now I'm really happy because it means the lawyers who joined, they're part of a family.
Yeah. Well, and to your earlier point, like if you I love the book Mastery by Robert Greene. I don't know if you've read it. He goes through like people, Leonardo da Vinci, all the whole way down. Basically, what everybody did is they took like multiple different areas they knew a ton about and combined them together to become a new master. And so, like, obviously, these people coming in for estate planning on day one, following what you all are doing is super helpful. But also for people that are not in estate planning, they could find something from this that they combine, the estate planning mindset with the PI type of cases, like combine those together, and somebody's going to get into some sort of interesting uniqueness. And so like I love reading in my industry, slightly outside my industry, and way outside my industry, because then like that's how you find mastery, is the overlaps or the lack of overlaps between different things.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. And if you do read the book, my favorite exercise, there's a few exercises in the book. There's a little bit of fluff, but not too much. The exercises are helpful. It's the very last exercise is my favorite. I think it's the most important one. So when you get to that last exercise, make sure that you do that one. It's a big one, and I think it's gonna help a lot of people.
Do you want to leave it at that teaser, or you want to talk about the exercise a little bit more specifically?
The exercise is basically, after we've kind of teed you up throughout the entire book, to take out a big legal pad and write up at the top, my never-ending list of wins. And we want you to start walking through, what have you done with your life? Did you travel to Europe by yourself at 17? That's a win. Did you make law review? Okay, great. That's a win. Did you stand up for yourself at a time that someone was bullying you? That's a win. Put it on the list. We want you putting these things on the list so you can visually see your never-ending list of wins and keep the list going.
Yeah. Oh, so I had a judge I was in front of way back in the day that had the best line: life is a grindstone, but whether it grinds you down or polishes you up is up to you. And so obviously, like, having that list of wins in that moment where you were thrown a curveball, I think becomes a way to really help make sure you are polished up and not grinded down.
I agree. That's a great analogy.
Wonderful. All right. So for people smart enough to want to hear more of what you have to say, check out the program, read the book, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
Yeah, so you can go to our website, which is the number 2 and then Our Lifestyle Lawyer, or email me, Laura at 2 Hour Lifestyle Lawyer. And the way we enroll people into our community is through a discovery call. So we're always hosting discovery calls. Join an upcoming call. Not a hardcore sales pitch. It's just, this is what we're teaching. This is how we can help. We'd love to have you in the community. And that's the best way to get started.
Awesome. Laura, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you to everybody who watched and listened to this. We'll see you back here next week for Aaron Anderson's episode. In the meantime, please, I will march a parade of guests who will convince you that you don't have to work a billion hours. You don't have to grind yourself into dust. Laura is a phenomenal example, and having helped literally hundreds and hundreds of other lawyers do the same. Like, please know that it's possible. Until then, see you all later.